Howdy folks, I'm Mark, and today I am joined by Billie Cox. Billie, thank you for joining me for this short talk about video games.
Hey, thanks for having me. We're on a podcast.
We are on a podcast because you are all listening to Quick Play, which is a podcast, so we can get into it. Which is, Billie, it's wonderful you bring that up because I like podcasts and you like podcasts, and we both listen to a lot of podcasts, and we also play a lot of video games, so we listen to a lot of podcasts about video games. So enough said on that. What are the podcasts, and more specifically the video game podcasts, that you listen to? Besides this one, of course.
Well, no, I want to bring this one up big time. I listen to this one weekly,
Oh my goodness.
as everybody should.
Thank you.
Other video, I almost said Nintendo because I listen to a lot of just Nintendo podcasts.
Yeah, same, honestly.
Yeah, a lot of them are Nintendo. So my big ones is like the Nintendo Powercast with N64 Josh, Not Crawler coming at you, Cheesy and John Evo. Communication Error with Cheesy and John Evo.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of Funny Games Daily. And then I listen to the Kit and Krista podcast.
Okay, very nice. So that's this communication Error, are they mainly Nintendo? Or they okay.
They try to talk about video games in general, but they're Nintendo fanboys. Cheesy only owns Nintendo, so
sure, I got you. I mean, I try to be broadly like ecumenical video game, but it's really mostly Nintendo. Any of those that like really you hold dearly?
Obviously this one.
Oh, thanks.
Man, honestly, they're all kind of special in their own way. So like Nintendo Powercast is one of those podcasts that I didn't listen to video game podcasts before that one. So N64 Josh and Nightcrawler got me very into like, okay, I can listen to video game podcasts, so that's a little special place in my heart.
Yeah.
So after listening to them for a couple months, I got into the Kind of Funny Games Daily.
Yeah.
And it's just a news podcast, and that is very important for podcasts for me. I like something that's very formulaic.
Okay.
Both of those are news-centric. I go into it, and I know what I'm getting myself into. It's like a quick intro, 5 to 10 minutes. Then they give their news. Then they... whatever the thing does, because both of them are completely different.
Gotcha. Sure.
So, like, I can listen to it, but not listen at the same time and feel like I'm missing out on anything if I just tune out at work. That's where I listen to a lot of my podcasts.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. So for myself, a handful that I listen to are friends of mine, which is a really nice thing to say. But the Bitcast from Jake Martin and Landry Smith, they're now going on a monthly basis. They like recap the news and releases from the month, and they talk about their plans, stuff like that. Also, their Name That Tune segment. Those are great guys that I am big fans of, and they are near and dear to my heart. And then also the Backlog Breakdown with Nate McKeever and Josh Broccolo. Both those guys have been on the podcast multiple times. They are more topical as opposed to like news stuff, but they take the angle of kind of prioritizing playing games on your backlog rather than like the constant hype cycle. But they also like to promote kind of really good stewardship around video games and like consuming what you own. And kind of the way that your money plays into that, but also just really thinking deeply about it in a way that's like being mindful of what you're consuming. And then also Watcher Gaming with Justin McGee and Matthew Pilkington. Both of those guys have been on here. They've been on a break for a bit, but I think they're making a comeback. A few others on my list, which I should say, I listen to a lot of podcasts on 1.5 speed, and if you do too, now, whether you, Billy, do or anyone out there, I totally get that. I respect it. That's how I can listen to so many podcasts.
No, that just sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks. I don't know how you do that.
Well, yeah, I just got used to it. I really like Triple Click, which is like Jason Schreier, Kirk Hamilton, and Maddie Myers. That's like the successor to Kotaku Split Screen, which has been actually a pretty big inspiration for this podcast. and the type of topics they go after. They're just all really smart people, and they delve into what game. Well, and they really delve into what makes games tick. For my news, I do like Last of the Nintendogs. So that's Jeff Grubb and Mike Minaj's podcast. They also have a Game Mess Decides, and I'll dabble in that if I have time. And then I also like Nate the Hate, which is a very sporadic podcast, but they Nate and MVG have like really good internal insight that's like unique and interesting. They're just really smart dudes. And then I'd routinely listen to IGN's Nintendo Voice Chat, which I would have dropped off a while back, but I think Seth Macy is just like the funniest person alive. So I just really like Seth Macy a lot, and if he's like still hosting it, I'll still listen to it. So that's my big batch of video game podcasts. And so you talked about you really appreciate a formula. Kind of anything else you look for in a podcast?
So here's the sad thing, and I love that we have different types of podcasts like we listen to. I feel like I'm at
it's notable like we don't really have much overlap at all, which is fascinating.
It is just yours, and I love all the guys that's been on this show. I love you guys, but unless you post a clip on X to advertise, I'm sorry, but I have not listened to you.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm at my max capacity for podcasts, and that scares me so much because I listen to it primarily at work or if I'm walking, anywhere. But there's only so many hours, and I'm comfortable with what I'm listening to. So I just haven't got any of those like in a backlog or a chamber or anything because I'm just like, I've got this episode that I need to listen to that I'm familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Are you about in the same boat?
Yes, I get really loyal to my podcast. So sometimes I will just skip an episode and I'm okay with that. That's hard to do actually. I'm hesitant to add more podcasts because eventually I feel like they're my friends, which is not unless I talked about those guys that I know actually personally, that's not really a thing. But I think why I love podcasts so much is I'm really hungry for these kinds of conversations, and so podcasts feel like I'm a part of it, which is almost sounds sad, but that's really part of the inspiration for this podcast is the intention of it being very limited and not comprehensive is that I want to be a conversation starting point of just I want you to take this podcast and then have these conversations with other people too. And I'd love for it to even just get your mind working on something something part of a game. But really what makes me stick with a podcast is kind of getting to know the hosts and beginning to actually just like them as people. So I'll start listening even when it's a topic I don't really care about at all.
No, I feel that completely, especially with the kind of funny games people.
Yeah.
Greg Miller's into pro wrestling, so am I. But then Tim Geddes is into Pokemon, so I'm listening to that. And then Blessing is into all the obscured games away from those two topics that I'm into. So I listen to them and I'm okay, I like this.
Yeah.
And it's an hour episode each day, so it's just I can't get away from it, and I love it.
That's so much work. It's so hard to
do.
They
put in so much work, and that's just one show.
Yeah. Which, granted, they are at the top of the charts every day, which is, I'm sure makes it worth it.
Do you check that stuff? Because I've never checked that stuff.
I think I've just seen it when other people post it. I have no idea where this podcast lands. It's probably not that high at all, but more so of I remember other people pointing out of oh yeah, Kind of Funny's always at the top, and that's the benchmark to beat.
Okay, see, I just listened to them, and I've never checked to see I've never checked podcasts to be okay, what's the top rated video game podcast? I've never gone off of that,
and that's not how I find podcasts. Usually, it's a recommendation through someone. And then, do you get ever involved in the community around the podcast? You're pretty active on X, Twitter, whatever it is, with the people you listen to. is that kind of for every podcast, or is that just for a few?
That's not for every podcast. So for video game related ones, like I do communicate with y'all on as much as I can. Nintendo Powercast, that's more of a YouTube chat thing. If I'm free when they're doing the live shows, I'll talk with them. Communication Error, I try to like throw in a couple comments each week on their episode. But when it comes to like Kinda Funny and Kent and Krista, they're so big that I feel like the fun thing about podcasts is kind of like what you said, like we're having a conversation. But those two are so big that I feel like I'm just throwing my comments into the void, similar to social media.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, like besides Bitcast, a Backlog Breakdown, and Watcher Gaming, like the guys I actually know, like I don't do any commenting or, like I just am a lurker and consume and enjoy it. So that makes total sense. Well, our time is short here, but I also want to know, are there any other like non-video game podcasts you listen to?
Oh yeah, so non-video game, Daily Show Ears Edition. I listen to weekly, actually by Adam Conover. That's one of those that I feel like I'm throwing like into the void. That like I love the topics he does, and then like I'll give my feedback. And Adam's so good at like just liking it. Like he'll never like reply, but he shows recognition of like, hey, this person's sharing the podcast. And I love the topics he does with experts.
Yeah.
Stuff You Should Know. Have you ever heard of that one?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I love those guys. They're so nerdy. It's good.
That's great. Any others? Yeah.
The last one I kind of listen to is like Hidden Brain. It talks about like psychology with the brain. And let me tell you what, I don't know why, but I feel like when I listen to this, I'm like, yeah, I knew this beforehand, but they say it in a smarter way, but then I'm still like, yeah, I knew that. So I listen to the whole episode, and I'm like, I'm smart. Man. I'm before you. I understand this, but they give you so much more detail than you understand.
That is the greatest kind of podcast that like it makes you feel smart as listening to it.
Yes.
That's perfect. Oh, man.
What kind do you listen to that's not a video game related?
So I've got a few different realms that I dig into. There's a few kind of like in the theology, Christianity space that like Bible Project, and there's one called Rebuilders I like a lot. That's more of a cultural engagement approach. Nerd culture stuff, so like Ringerverse is my go-to for like Marvel and Star Wars. It's from the Ringer. They dig into stuff like that. It was the kind of spiritual successor to Binge Mode. So Mallory Rubin is a big voice on there, and she's hilarious and awesome. There's a few on Formula One that I really like. So Ringer F1 show and one called DNF. And then also one or two or a few on Bigfoot. But anyway, so wrapping up now. Billy, before we go, what are you playing?
I'm playing Marvel Midnight Suns.
Oh, nice. I have wanted to check that out. I am really curious.
PlayStation Plus, I'll give you my info, son.
Well, I don't have one of those PlayStations, but if you want to give me a PlayStation.
You got a computer, right?
I do.
Yeah, I'll give you my login info.
Okay. I don't know if my MacBook Air can handle that, but we'll try it out.
It's streaming. Surely.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I am probably still playing Stardew Valley. Who knows? Well, Billy, thank you again for joining me, for talking about podcasts. Where else you out on the internet?
I am on X, Quick Play, and then I make a lot of comments on Communication Error Podcasts.
There you go. All those guys are great. And thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services and all those podcasting places. And you can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod, and let us know what are the other podcasts you listen to. I'm curious. We don't have enough to listen to, so we ought to add more. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.